I can't. But...
We're live now.
Yeah, we could just...
We're live now. We're live now.
Oh, we're live. Sorry. we were just talking about whether to turn the fans off or on. So for us, it's starting to get a bit cool in here. But for where you are, it might be whatever temperature you like. Just briefly answering Franny Manis, you can turn them off or one of them off if you want to.
Turn one of them off.
So yeah, my name is Kishanti Kara, and I'm here sitting in front of the camera and also sitting in front of the shrine at the London Buddhist Centre. We've got Polly behind the camera. But I don't think Polly can come and say hello because we'd be too close. So yeah, Polly is behind the camera. And then with me in the shrine room is also Pranya Manas and Maitra Raja, who you'll meet later this evening. So we've got a few minutes until we start the class. So, make yourself comfortable. The class this evening is going to be made up of meditation, a sort of story in the form of a talk, but mainly a story, and then a ritual at the end. Do make sure you're comfortable because we'll be here together for an hour and a half. Maybe sitting on a chair, or if you're sitting on the floor, find a way to get as comfortable as you can. Make sure your knees are supported on the ground. And maybe while you're joining us, why don't you type in the chat box your name and where you're from? And then I can say hello to you like a kind of radio presenter. Has anyone done that yet?
Yep, Harvey.
Hello, Harvey.
Kevin.
And Kevin, nice to see you as well.
And Jane.
And Jane.
Yeah.
Great. We've got about another minute and a half, and then we'll begin the evening. I kind of want to say, so keep arriving, but of course, if you haven't arrived yet, you're not there. But for those people that are not arrived yet, keep coming. And those of you that are there, make yourself comfortable. If you're just arriving, I'd say my name's Kishanti Kara again. Polly is behind the camera, a tech crew, and then I'm also here with Pranya Manas and Maitra Raja. And this is the first evening of a new kind of series, which I'll say more about in a minute. But it's really enjoyable to be here at the London Buddhist Centre in the shrine room, but also to be here with more people than usual. So I've maybe done one or two of these YouTube classes, and it's usually just been me and someone like Polly behind the camera, and then you out there on the other side of the lens. But this evening, I'm here with my friends Pranya Manas and Maitra Raja, and we're doing the class together. We're doing the class together along with another friend of ours, Kusala Sara, for the next 4 weeks. I don't know, so it's a little bit of another phase of returning to something a little bit more normal, a little bit more what the London Centre used to be like. We'd gather together, particularly a group of order members, and then other people that come to the centre would also gather early as a team and sort of set the centre up together. So it's nice to be back here as a team. You can't see why I'm looking over there, but that's where Pranya Manas and Maitra Raja is, and then Polly's behind here. Okay, so it's just gone 7 o'clock. Let's begin. So I don't know whether I'm repeating myself for some people, but my name's Kishanti Kara. Polly is behind the camera, and Pranya Manas and Maitra Raja are also here with me. And we're starting this 4-week, it's maybe not quite a course, but this 4-week series. So for the next Friday evenings, you'll find myself, Kishanti Kara, Pranya Manas, Maitra Raja, and then another friend of ours, Kusala Sara. And the four of us will, over the next 4 weeks, be exploring similar themes together. And what we'll be doing with this class is we'll meditate. It roughly falls into 3/3, so it's an hour and a half long. So we'll meditate together, and in a minute, Maitra Raja will lead us in that. Then after that, I'm this evening going to, I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm going to tell you the story of the Buddha before he was the Buddha. And I'll tell you his story right from birth, right up to just before the Buddha became the Buddha. I quite like telling stories, so I'm looking forward to that bit. And then after that, Pranya Manas will introduce us to Buddhist ritual, which you may or may not have come across before, but he'll introduce that to us. And then we'll end our week, we'll end our Friday evening with a ritual, a really good way to bring the week to a close. And we've called this series, this 4 weeks of Friday evenings, Evoking Enlightenment. Evoking Enlightenment. And that's what we're going to try and do. In meditation, we can move closer to the enlightened mind, to the mind of the Buddha. We can sort of start to wake that potential in our minds and work with our minds to move towards it. And then in stories, we'll use stories to evoke, to bring to mind the Buddha. And then again at the end with the ritual, we'll use language and poetry and sort of symbol to invoke enlightenment. So all evening it's as if we really are kind of gathering around the shrine here together, us in person, you via the internet or via this very small webcam that I'm talking into. We're all going to gather around the shrine together, end our week on a Friday evening by turning our minds towards the Buddha, this beautiful, well, as represented by this golden statue, this rupa here. So that's what we'll be doing this evening and for the next 4 weeks. But in the meantime, I'll hand over to Maitreya.
Yeah, thank you, Kshantikara. Yeah, so very good to be here back in the London Buddhist Centre. I've not taught in here or been here for a good number of months, so it's a real pleasure to be back in here with you all. So yeah, my name's Maitreya Raja. I've been involved with the London Buddhist Centre for a long time now and contributing in all sorts of ways and really benefiting from what we do here. One of the tasks that I've been involved with during this period of lockdown is I've been looking after our email account called stayingconnected@lbc.org.uk. And in a way, it's been very interesting. You know, we weren't sure whether our online activities were initially going to work. We were so used to teaching in this shrine room. But very quickly, we got up and running with the online teaching. And also very, very quickly, we were getting lots and lots of appreciation for what we've been doing here. And many people have written to us, and some have used, phrases like life-saving, and lots of gratitude and appreciation has been expressed. And also, there's been, people really struggling with difficult things, and I think this phrase "staying connected" is a good one. And it's not always too easy to do. You need to use your imagination, I think, in order to stay connected. And meditation is a really good way of helping us to do that. So in a moment, what we're going to do is we're going to do a period of the Metta Bhavana practice. We're going to do a kind of a slightly simplified version of the Metta Bhavana. I know some of you watching will be, very familiar with the Metta practice and seasoned practitioners, but we also might have some people who've just tuned in for the very first time tonight. So I'm going to, in a way, do a simplified version of the Metta Bhavana in 3 stages. And in a way, the best way to think of it is just a bit of a chance to maybe change gear from whatever we've been doing today, to get in a bit more of a meditative space, a quieter space, a more relaxed space, and I'll hopefully help us into that. And then to starting with ourselves, really connecting with a kindly, a friendly, warm attitude towards ourselves. And then from there, broadening out to seeing if we could imaginatively feel the connection with others in all sorts of different ways. So, so there's 4 of us in the shrine room here. There's probably, how many are there now, Pauline, with us?
37.
Okay, so there's 37 people tuning in. So there's just over 40 people going to be spending the evening together. Probably maybe in all different parts of the world even. People have been tuning in from all over the world for our teaching. So we'll in the 3rd stage of the Metta Bhavana practice, we'll have a chance to imagine people in locations, in all these different locations, really trying to connect with this quality of loving kindness, connect with this quality of metta. And this quality is so badly needed in the world, isn't it? I mean, you really can't get enough of it. We can't get enough friendliness and of a loving attitude in relationship to ourselves, but especially in relationship to other people. And we're so sort of bound up with other people, aren't we? We can't function in the world without the help of other people in all sorts of ways. So really developing and being in touch with friendly, creative, loving attitude towards other people is very important, I think. So what we're going to do then is I'll guide us into the meditation. We'll probably be meditating for about 20 minutes and a little bit of like guiding us in. And then in the first stage, those of you who know the practice, we'll start with ourselves. We'll start in the best place, the most logical place. If we can have be in touch with that kind of attitude towards ourselves, then it's easier to extend out from there, to open out from there. And so we just try to be alive to our current experience, whatever that may be right now. Whatever mood we're in, we just bring attention to that and just see if we can hold that in kindly awareness. Feel that experience within kindly awareness. Sense into that experience within kindly awareness. So we'll do that in the first stage. And then in the second stage, what we're going to do is we're going to bring a good friend to mind. Somebody we really like, we feel positive towards, somebody we're regularly in touch with. And we're going to see if we can visually imagine them. So you might see them as a picture in your mind, or through memory, you might have a felt sense of them being here, as it were. And you're looking to extend this fellow feeling to include them. So broadening out from yourself, broadening out any sense of loving kindness that you connected with for yourself to a good friend. And you might know what's going on for them in their lives at the moment. So they might be struggling a bit in this time of coronavirus, or things may be going reasonably okay, but you've not seen them for a while and you're missing seeing them directly. Maybe you've been having video calls on WhatsApp and things like that, but you've not actually seen them for a long time. So just really seeing if you can bring them to mind as fully as you can and wishing them well. Yeah? May they be well. May they be happy. And then in the third and final stage of this shortened metta practice, what we're going to do is we're going to see if we can equalize the metta, the loving kindness, for both our friend and ourselves. So really wanting the best for both of us. So may we be well, may we be happy. Yeah? And then from there, we can allow our awareness to gradually broaden, and really seeing if you can actually start with the people who are actually doing this same activity at the same time as you now. So you can have a sense of the four of us here in this shrine room at the London Buddhist Centre. And and there's over 30 other people, who knows where they are. Well, quite a few will be in London, but there might be a few people from other parts of Europe, even people from America. So really just sort of seeing if you can have a sense of solidarity, fellowship with all those people who just want to spend their Friday nights meditating, hearing about the Buddha, and doing a ritual together. And then from there, you can just allow your imagination to broaden and deeper further, and maybe in quite a random way, just like noticing who comes into your experience of mind, heart, and allowing them to be touched by any loving kindness that you manage to cultivate, be in touch with. Okay, so those are the stages. So if you'd like to set yourselves up now in your meditation posture, if you do have a shrine at home, I hope you've lit your shrine and you're ready to go in front of that. You may want to meditate in front of your shrine rather than in front of me, and that's completely fine for you to do that. Okay, so we're just going to spend a little bit of time before we go into the meditation itself, just preparing. So just becoming a little bit more aware of the body in the present moment, feeling the weight of the upper body pressing through the sitting bones and falling down into the cushion or the chair, whatever you're sitting on. Really allowing all of the heaviness of the muscles and the bones to flow down into the floor, into the earth beneath you. Really coming home to yourself, within yourself. Perhaps just checking in what kind of mood you're in. It's the end of the week, so you may have been working from home, or you may have been furloughed at this time, doing other activities. Whatever it is, just tuning in to how you are right now on this Friday evening, without judgment. Really taking an interest in your current experience, whatever it may be. The metta bhavana practice. So in the first stage, continuing to explore your present moment experience with a loving, friendly attitude. And when you're ready, you can just drop in these simple phrases to help to connect with that attitude, that well-wishing for yourself. May I be well. May I be happy. And if your mind wanders off, just noticing that, coming back to your direct experience of mind, body, heart, and coming back to these phrases. May I be well. May I be happy. staying with your direct experience. May I be well. In the second stage, bringing a good friend to mind. Really seeing if you can get a clear sense of them. And then broadening this attitude of friendliness to include them. May they be well. May they be happy. Seeing if you can feel your connection that you have with this particular friend. May they be happy. And in the third and final stage, just seeing if you can have a sense of both yourself and your good friend, and really wanting the best for both of you. May we be well. May we be happy. And then after a little while, when you're ready, you can gradually broaden your awareness to include others. People meditating with you now in different locations. People you'll be seeing over the weekend. People who come to mind. So starting with you and your friend and broadening gradually when you're ready. May we be well. May we be happy. Seeing if you can imaginatively feel your connections with others. May we be well. Okay, so I'm going to hand back now to Kshantikara, and he's going to tell us a bit more about the person who got enlightened in northern India 2,600 years ago.
Great, thank you very much, Maharaja. Yeah, very, very nice to settle down a bit. I was doing the introducing at the beginning. Well, getting a bit excited. Yeah, very good to settle down. So yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, so if you weren't here at the beginning, my name's Kshantikara. Yeah, and this evening I'm going to, just for the next 25 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, well, I'm going to tell you a story. And as Maharaja alluded to, the story is, well, 2,500, 2,600, something like that, years old. So it's a very old story. But like with all stories, well, it's relevant. It's relevant. And I really like this this part, the passing down of stories, that sort of ancient human tradition of passing down of stories. I was having a sort of WhatsApp conversation with my friend Akasa Jyoti the other day. Akasa Jyoti likes to send voice messages via WhatsApp. Actually, I'm not too much of a fan of, but anyway, she sends WhatsApp voice messages. I was listening along to it, and she'd just woken up from a nap. She said something like it was, a really deep nap. It was like the nap, like the god Hypnos, like the Greek god Hypnos, who I'd never come across before, but thought, oh, that must be like hypnosis, the god of Hypnos, And so I looked it up and started reading these stories about this god Hypnos, and I just got really excited about Greek myth, and then texted her and said, have you got any suggestions of book to read? How do you know this guy, Hypnos? You see what I mean? These stories, these images, they sort of pass through time. And that god Hypnos story must be very, very old, but it was still relevant for me. Or in fact, because it was so old, it felt even more relevant somehow. Yes, there's something I really like about stories, and they sort of tumble through time, and they change a bit as well. So I thought, slightly by way of a disclaimer, this is my pieced together account of, well, the early life of the man that became the Buddha. If you Googled this story, I'm sure you'd find different things, or if Maitreya told this story, or if Pranayamanas told this story, lots of it would be the same, but little things would be different, or each of us would highlight a different thing. So I really like that about stories too. So yeah, I'm gonna, for the next 25 minutes, tell you the story of the man that became the Buddha. But I'm actually going to end the story just before he even starts sitting under the Bodhi tree, where he became enlightened, became the Buddha. So the story is 2,600 years old and set in northern India. I think sort of near Nepal. I think sometimes even on the border of Nepal and India. Well, I was thinking that one of my favourite films growing up was a film called A Little Princess. A Little Princess. It's one of my favourite films. It was directed actually by the guy who directed The Prisoner of Azkaban, a Harry Potter film, which is also one of my favourite films. But in A Little Princess, or it might be called The Little Princess, it's about this young girl who is brought up in India. I think she's American or perhaps British, and she's British and she's brought up in India. And then later on in her life, she has to go to boarding school in America while her father goes to fight in the First World War. And all through the film, she sort of has dreams about her time in India as a child, and they're really colourful and sort of mystic and magical. And I quite like that sort of Western preoccupation with India being mysterious and colourful and marvellous and sort of strange and different. So that's where our story takes place, in this sort of mysterious, colourful, otherworldly kind of land. And it's said that, Siddhartha Gautama, who's the man who became the Buddha, Siddhartha, when his mother was pregnant, when the baby was born, a soothsayer, sort of fortune teller, came to see the family of the Buddha to be, Siddhartha Gautama. And told his father, and his father was a king, a great king, a clansman, sort of powerful king-like figure. And this soothsayer, this fortune teller, told this king that your son is either going to be a great ruler, a mighty ruler, a fine king just like yourself, or he'll be a great sage, a holy man, a religious leader. And so in this version of the story, the father, of course, thinks, I'd much rather he be a mighty king like me, maybe to hand on his legacy. At the time in India, maybe even today, there's still a little bit of this, that, part of parents is the hope of grandparents, and sort of carrying on, being grandparents and grandchildren, and carrying on your legacy. So in the story, this king, this father of the Buddha-to-be, wants him to be a king, doesn't like the idea of him being a holy wanderer or a religious man. And so decides to bring the Buddha-to-be, Siddhartha, up as as great an environment as possible, as wonderful an environment as possible. If his son, this king's son, this Buddha-to-be, just had a wonderful upbringing, why would he want to be anything else other than a mighty ruler? So it's often talked about that the Buddha-to-be is brought up in a life of luxury. Whatever he wants is there. You can imagine this sort of palace of luxury, sort of feasts of foods, minstrels with music. Often it's talked about as dancing girls, which I personally quite like the sound of, dancing girls and minstrels and feasts, a sort of extravagant, luxury, princely lifestyle. I was thinking actually a little bit about, living in community. I live in community here with Pranayamanas. In fact, all four of us live in different communities that are in the room at the moment. And I've joined a Buddhist order. My name's Kashanti Karan. I've joined the Triratna Buddhist order. And, I'm definitely trying to live a more simple life, and yet, I was just leaving, just before this, I was eating sort of tofu and nice vegetables in this wonderful sort of sauce that Yana Dyer, our friend, had made for Pranayamanas and I. And as we were leaving, we were going to miss out on the dessert, which, when I looked over to the fairly expensive Magimix food blender, was sort of like berries and chocolate and sort of leaves of something. I'm not quite sure what it was, and broken biscuits that were going to be blended up and added to some kind of I imagine, posh yogurt, and that be fed to us. And I think as I was leaving, there was even talk of decaf coffee. Yeah. So, well, as I talk about this Buddha to be being brought up in a palace of luxury, I'm reminded of something my friend Raja Bandhu once said in a retreat I was on. And he was telling this story and emphasizing this palace of luxury, but then saying that, you know, the way that we live now in modern Britain in comparison to ancient India is probably pretty luxurious. I think he said something like, if we were to compare ourselves to medieval princes, we're probably even doing better. We probably even have more than a medieval prince in Britain. Anyway, so I think it is relevant to us that the Buddha spends his life in a life of luxury. And I think, roughly speaking, or just definitely speaking, that's been my life. I haven't really wanted for much. I've never gone hungry. Far from it, actually. I've had great holidays, and I've been quite pained by the theatres and cinemas and art galleries being closed. I like to go and look at them. So I think it's really relevant to us that Siddhartha Gautama, this Buddha to be, was brought up in this palace of luxury. And perhaps like us, try as much as the Father could. Perhaps like us, the Buddha to be still felt unsatisfied. So he's got feasts, minstrels, maybe beautiful cloths, wonderful sounds, dancing girls, good friends, wine. And yet he finds himself perhaps a bit dissatisfied, or a bit curious at least, or there must be something more. And it's said that he then decided to exit the palace. Sometimes in some accounts, it's as if he left the palace for the very first time, but maybe it's a metaphor. Maybe he metaphorically left for the first time, or maybe this really is the first time he left this palace of luxury. And he goes out with his charioteer, with his friend charioteer. And as he's passing through the town, well, he sees 4 sights. Often it's told over 4 different days. He sees I'm not quite sure if I'll get the order right, but he sees an old man, an ill man, and a dead man. Yeah, and a dead man. So you can imagine Siddhartha Gautama going out from this palace of luxury as if for the first time, and seeing as if for the first time something that wasn't luxury. Yeah, seeing an old man. Someone who's, well, sort of falling apart. Someone who's falling apart. I live with my good friend, David Mitra, who I think is sort of 72, and he wouldn't mind me telling you that he's falling apart. Quite often, you know, as months go by, a new ailment has come. His hands ache, or he's lost his energy, or he's not sleeping well, or he's got weak legs, or just by this nature of getting older. The same with my grandparents. You know, the more I see my grandparents get older, the more difficult life looks, the more they have to plan things, the more they have to have special gadgets to help them out these days. So it's as if the Buddha saw for the first time, or the Buddha to be saw for the first time, old age. And then another day goes out and sees an ill man, someone who's diseased. I don't know, but let's say it was sort of sort of very old India, so maybe they looked really bad. And maybe they're at the side of the street, looking pretty worse for wear and really suffering. And you can imagine what it'd be like to see that for the first time. Hang on a minute, there's an old man, and now there's this person over here that looks pretty bad and unwell and uncared for. And you can imagine even being a bit frightened. They look like you. Maybe this will happen to you. You haven't quite thought about that before. And then again on this third day, traditionally the Buddha to be Siddhartha Gautama sees a dead man. In India, to this day, it's much more common to see dead bodies. In this country, we tend to sort of box up dead bodies quite quickly. So before I started going to Buddhist funerals, I'd never seen a dead person. I'd been to quite a few funerals, but usually it was the person was in the box and a photograph of them was on top. Since I've been coming to funerals at the Buddhist Center, quite often, roughly where I'm sitting, there'll be an open coffin with a dead man or woman in it. And I must tell you that the first time I came to one of those funerals, I A, wasn't expecting it, and B, it did really affect me. I'd never seen somebody that was dead before. And it definitely made me think, I will one day be a dead body. Everybody will one day be a dead body. I even thought, well, I was getting quite close to being ordained at that point, and I thought, oh, if I'm still around the London Buddhist Centre, I'll be in an open coffin just where this man is. It had quite a strong effect on me. And it's said that Siddhartha Gautama also had something of that effect, almost like a kind of awakening, an epiphany of, oh, life has old age, sickness, and death. My life has old age, sickness, and death. I can't remember the traditional accounts, but the charioteer, in a lovely kind of, in the Pali canon, the ancient texts of the Buddhist tradition, is very repetitive. And the charioteer, I think, says something like, they ask if you, the Buddha to be asks him a few times something, and the charioteer basically again and again says, yes, this will happen to you, it will happen to everyone. The truth of old age, the truth of death, the truth of illness cannot be escaped. So, then there's this fourth site. So they're the first of the three sites. There's 4 sites traditionally, and those were the first 3. And on the 4th day, Siddhartha Gautama goes out to the palace again with his charioteer and sees a wandering holy man, a man in a saffron robe, a shaved head, with nothing other than a bowl to collect food in, his robe, and maybe 1 or 2 other items, just wandering in seeking the truth. And, traditionally, this would have been very common historically in India at the time, wandering holy men who had gone forth from their life as they knew it, donned a robe, shaved their head, and gone looking for the meaning of life or a quest for something beyond old age, sickness, and death, a sort of quest for meaning or for something beyond those things. And Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, is really strongly affected by this 4th site. And in seeing this holy man, thinks, I could do that. I could wander in quest of the truth too. I think even a sense of, I want to do that. And I remember that personally when I came to my first class at the London Buddhist Centre. It was at a Quaker house in Westminster, actually, in Covent Garden. And I was doing a 4-week course that was led by the London Buddhist Centre there. It was led by an ordinary member called Sangasiya. And, I really responded to meditation, to the mindfulness of breathing and the metta bhavana, the kind of awareness and the love practices we teach here at the London Buddhist Centre. But I really responded to Sangasiya. He's quite a stocky man. He's bald. He's very masculine. He's a little bit frightening, actually. He's definitely a kind of man, a kind of bloke. I think he might have been a fighter pilot or something like that. I don't know, or a pilot of some sort. Not a fighter pilot, a pilot, people are nodding. I like the idea of fighter pilots. Since I'm telling a story, I can embellish that. So let's say the fighter pilot, you're really strong. And I just thought, who is this man teaching this class, wearing a kesa as I am, with a strange name of Sangasiya? And he kept referring to friends in a way that I hadn't heard men talk about friends before. And he was teaching me how to be more aware and how to love. And I hadn't come across a man doing that either. And so he definitely was, for me, a 4th site. And I remember in that moment thinking, whatever that man is doing, I want to be doing it too. Whatever he is part of, I want to be part of. Whatever quest he's on, sign me up. And at the end of that meditation course, I remember him saying, if you've enjoyed this course, the winter retreat is starting in a couple of months. You can go for 5 days or 10 days. I'd really recommend you go for 10. And so I'd only been to these 4 mornings of meditation. I was very new, and I just thought, right, I'm signing up for this 10-day winter retreat. And I'm just trying to give you a personal story of a 4th site. So before that meditation course, it wasn't particularly old age, sickness, and death that was bothering me, but it was a similar sort of thing of like, what is life for? My university course was coming to an end. I wasn't that happy. In fact, I felt less happy than before I went to university. Wasn't sure where my life was going. I'd spent my childhood trying to believe in God and not getting anywhere. And then I found myself at this class and then had this 4th site, this experience of seeing this holy man, in my case, Sangasiya. And so just like this, the Buddha to be, Siddhartha Gautama, also decides he wants to be like that holy man. he wants to go forth, leave the house life, leave the worldly life, and go forth into the spiritual life, the life of a wanderer. And so the Buddha-to-be, Siddhartha Gautama, sneaks out of the palace in the middle of the night, And in some accounts of this story, he has a wife and a child. In other accounts, he doesn't. I quite like the stories, or the telling of the story, when he leaves behind his wife and a child. So that brings up complicated contemporary issues of abandonment, for sure, and maybe that was true at the time as well. But in terms of the story and in terms of a metaphor, to leave somebody you're in love with and to leave your own son behind, whatever you're leaving for, must be very, very important, and must be beyond your own sort of desires or what you hold most dear. So I like that bit of the story. And I just like the idea of how much you have to tear yourself away from what you love in order to go on a quest. So anyway, he leaves the house, the palace, sneaks out of the palace in the middle of the night, and he goes forth. And in some accounts, he's riding on a horse, and these spirits, these devas, with their hands, cup the hooves of the horse so that it doesn't wake the palace, so that nobody knows the Buddha-to-be, Siddhartha Gautama, is running away from this princely life, from his inheritance as a king, say, to the holy life. I love this idea of these sort of spirits, these gods, these devas, using their hands to cup the hooves of the horse as the Buddha rides away, so that nobody can hear anything. And that sort of myth of if you turn your mind to what's most important, if you go on a quest for meaning and truth, if you take up the religious life, then there are forces, in this case spirits and devas, there are forces that will help you. They'll join in. You won't quite be alone. I really like that bit of the story. And so he rides for a while until he's far away from the palace, sends the horse back. Sometimes with an account he's with someone, but maybe let's just say in this story the horse knows where to go. And he takes his long sword, and he's got long, princely, traditional Indian hair. At the time, I think a kind of image of wealth and beauty. And he takes his sword and he cuts his hair off. So he has this great long hair and he cuts it off. Again, this sort of symbol of leaving that old life behind. In his case, this life of luxury and of even then kind of power of being a ruler. And I was just thinking about lockdown. So a few of my friends have had haircuts now in the last couple of days. They've gone to barbershops. I think my girlfriend at the moment is at the hairdressers, so she won't be watching this, but maybe she'll watch it later. So people are going back to the hairdressers, back to the barbers. But throughout lockdown, people just had to deal with their hair a bit less. And quite a lot of my friends, including me, just buzz cutted it down, just got rid of it. I quite liked how, lockdown had a feature of leaving the world behind, didn't it? We were just stuck in one place. We couldn't do all the things we usually do. Anyway, so that's my attempt to kind of segue in something similar about hair being something about the way we present to the world, and what we do with it can be quite significant. And people do, even to this day, take hair quite seriously. In this kind of lockdown period where we haven't been so much people of the world, we too kind of cut our hair down a bit, didn't keep it as luxurious as we perhaps did. So Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha-to-be, has left the palace, cut off his hair, and I think uses some earth to dye his robes the traditional saffron colour. And so he's now a holy man. Siddhartha has become a holy man. He's left his life behind. He's gone forth. And you can imagine him now just wandering. He's just wandering across India. Particularly, I like to think of his wandering through woods, through forests. This kind of call of nature. Yes, he's been called to the woods. He's left the cities behind, he's left the palace behind, and he's gone to the woods. I like that idea of having to kind of face your fear. Yeah, woods are frightening, particularly at night, particularly in northern India, where you'll find tigers. I don't know whether you'll find bears, but traditionally, tigers and lions and bears, oh my, you'd find in the forest. So he has to face these fears. But I also like this idea of there's something in nature, there's something in the woods that calls to us at this kind of quest, something of what life should be about. Back when life was normal, I'd quite often go on retreats, and those retreats happen in nature, and there's just something there that feels a bit truer, something that kind of calls to me. So fast forwarding through this period, I don't know how long these things went on for, but he was wandering and he comes across some meditation teachers. Just as I did, just as, you did just now, didn't you? You came across Maitreya. So he came across these masters of meditation, perhaps just like Maitreya, masters of meditation. And what's said is Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha to be, learned these skills of meditation very, very quickly. So quickly and with such sort of promise and skill that quickly he overtook his teachers in terms of ability. And I think what's really interesting about this part of the story is that, Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, really clearly applies himself. He hasn't just left his house and gone on a quest. He's willing to really put his energy into it. He masters meditation, overtakes his teachers. I think what's also interesting about this incident is the teachers invite him to stick around. It gets to the point where Siddhartha can no longer learn anything from these teachers. He's mastered the art of meditation. He can completely settle his mind. He can see more clearly. He can completely calm his thoughts. Something I quite fancy. Even just he can sit completely still in meditation. I'd really like to be able to do that. So he's mastered it. He's an expert. And the teachers say to him, we've got nothing more we can teach you, but why don't you join me at the top of this school, this group, and you can lead it with me. And at this point, Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha to be, says, he can see that he hasn't quite found the answer yet. Whatever it is he's looking for, this freedom, this answer to the issue of old age, sickness, and death, this quest for meaning, for enlightenment, he can see he's really achieved incredible states of meditation. He's overtaken his teachers. He's mastered it. But he knows that he hasn't made it yet. And I think this is a really interesting moment because, he's got the opportunity basically to be a celebrity. He could be the best meditation teacher in India ever, or at least at that time. He could have masses of followers. They could give him lots of money, or they could give him lots of praise. He could be a celebrity, yeah? And I think that's quite a common thing for us. I certainly quite like to be famous, sort of, or like the idea of being a celebrity. And, I've been ordained and I've sort of given my life to this quest of enlightenment. But I wonder what it'd be like if I got pretty close or got very good at meditation, say, and someone invited me to, you could now just have a massive following of your own. What do you think about that, Kshantikara? And I think I might say, I fancy that. I think maybe I'll stop here. I've got quite far, but I think I'll stop here and have a nice following. But the Buddha doesn't do that. He keeps questing. And so from the meditation teachers, he goes to join this group of, I can never quite say this word properly, but ascetics. Thank you, Polly. Ascetics. Practicing asceticism. I think that's right. We've got some nuts. So he goes to join these guys in the woods, say, doing crazy things with their bodies. The idea being that if you kind of mortified your flesh, separated your body from your soul would rise up and, achieve enlightenment or find the truth. It would just be a very good thing. I'm not completely sure why they were doing it. Anyway, that's what they were doing. And it still happens in India to this day. I remember watching a Louis Theroux documentary where there was a man who had had his hand above his head for 20 years, and so he could no longer move it. But presumably to begin with, that's quite a hard feat. And his arm was all withered away. And it's sort of, he had followers as a result. And again, the Buddha to be, Siddhartha Gautama, he really masters these practices. I think there's talk of him sitting in fires or starving himself, or maybe he does things like hold his arm up for many years. He masters it. Particularly the last thing he's doing is he's starving himself. It's said that he has a grain of rice, just one grain of rice every day. And again, he becomes the kind of leader of this group, the one they look to. Just very, very impressive. This man is really serious about what he's doing. But he's really starved himself. And what happens in the story is I think he falls into a river. He falls into a river and he lacks the strength because he starved himself to get out of it. He's saved by somebody. He's saved by somebody. And upon being saved, he realizes this again isn't going anywhere. Just like those meditation teachers with all those techniques and all those special things to do, this isn't going anywhere either. In fact, I've almost ended my life. I've almost killed myself by eating a grain of rice a day. This again can't be the answer. And again, I think that's so impressive to have done something so fully, to have really committed to this line of practice, to have really given it his all, but then also to have the intelligence to think, this isn't doing it. This isn't doing it for me. Perhaps that might be in our lives. We really applied ourselves to something that we really believed in, and then it just isn't quite doing it. It's not working. We've achieved it, but that's not enough. And I think it's really brave in that moment to think, well, I'm gonna pack it in then and carry on with my quest. So at this point, somebody gives the Buddha, I think, a kind of rice pudding, I like to think of it, and the Buddha eats the rice pudding and is nourished, where he goes from being so weak that he almost drowned to being nourished and strong again. And at this point, he has this memory of sitting in a field as a young boy, watching his father plough the field under a rose apple tree, this kind of beautiful rose apple tree, watching his father plough a field, or I think it's about this moment. And he remembers this feeling as a child of just being completely content, completely mindful, completely at ease, sitting there, and the whole day, the whole of time just went all a bit fuzzy. Where he's watching this ploughing this field, and then he starts to think, oh, maybe that's what I need to do. I just need to sit somewhere, develop contentment, sit by a beautiful tree, and just stay with that, and maybe that will take me to the end of my quest to full and perfect enlightenment. And so we'll leave the story there for this evening. We'll leave the story. The Buddha to be, Siddhartha Gautama, has grown up as a prince, left the palace in search of the holy life, in search of the truth, in search for a question or a way to answer this problem of old age, sickness, and death. What is life for? What is it about? He goes on this quest. He masters meditation. He's offered a whole following, a celebrity status, I call it. He turns it down. He becomes an expert in these, I can't say it again, but aesthetics practices. And he again starves his body and he becomes well known from that. But again, he leaves that behind. And then we leave the story this week as he's off to sit under a tree. And so we'll pick it up next week. Good. So that's the story for this week of Siddhartha, the Buddha to be. And so now I'll hand over to my friend Pranyamanas, who will lead us in a ritual, and he'll talk that through first. But yeah, I've really enjoyed telling you a story.
Mine about the right place? That way a bit.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, good. Thank you. So good evening from me. Yes, my name is Pranyamanas, and very glad to be doing this series with you all and with my friends. So hope you'll join us for the rest of the Fridays of this month, where we'll go through the rest of the story and we'll all cycle around, and our friend Kusla Sara will also be joining us. She's not available tonight. Anyway, we're going to switch modes now after that very enlivening story from Kshatikara and do a bit of ritual. But now would be a good time to stretch your legs if you need to, get a glass of water. Perhaps particularly if you haven't already, have a lit candle about you. You might be sitting in front of a shrine already, but if you're not, you could do whatever's closest to a shrine in your lounge or wherever you are now. So yes, I don't want to say too much for now. The best thing with a ritual is just to do it, probably. But just want to say that I'm pleased that we're working in all these modes in these classes. So we're meditating to soften up, tune up the mind, hearing a story of, the first human being, as the tradition has it, in our current world system, who achieved enlightenment. And then engaging in something a bit different. So allowing through ritual and through a certain unclenching from the rational, allowing our imagination to ascend a bit and just connect with what we've heard, a bit of beauty, higher value, and just see what that does for us. So, a little about that first. But even as I talk, you could be getting your room ready if you need to, getting the lighting right. We're going to be turning our lights down in a moment when we do our ritual. So yes, why ritual? Well, I sometimes think about a cinema I used to go to. It was called The Screen in Winchester, where I spent my teenage years, and at the time it cost £3 for a student to go there. But if you call to mind a cinema corridor, even if it's a while since you've been to one, you'll remember that they're covered in old movie posters, and they're often painted black or deep red or dark purple or something, and you slightly lose track of which floor you're on because you go down or up a sloping floor and there's no windows anymore, and you're going somewhere dark, and you know that you're going into a story usually, but even the route there gives you a kind of change of mode, and that's the kind of thing you want to conjure when going into a puja, because we're not going to be thinking about the Buddha as such, or even thinking about what our own values are. We're going into a sort of imaginative space. We don't know exactly what's going to happen or what it's going to be like. Sometimes you go to the cinema and you don't like the film much, do you? But even going is its own whole cycle. You can even not like the film, but kind of like the evening out, you know. But yes, I think these rituals arose really, this kind of more imaginative, absorbed mode that we go into, like when you've gone down the cinema corridor and you won't go back the other way for a couple of hours. So you're switching off certain parts of, certain rationalizing faculties. Would be that when the Buddha was alive, people would just gather around him. So after the Enlightenment, which we'll hear about next week, I think, the Buddha had followers, and they could just sit with him. And there are many, many stories of people coming into the Buddha's presence, being completely awed by it, sometimes being overwhelmed by a very, very deep peace, sometimes breaking down in tears because they're so moved, but always deeply affected by it. And usually there's a sort of ritual actually described in the Buddhist texts. There was obviously a custom of keeping the Buddha to your right, because after receiving a teaching from the Buddha and saluting him, they always seem to leave with the Buddha on their right, and they always seem to sit down to one side of him anyway. So they obviously had a custom around how you sit and speak, when you speak, how you greet. So there was a ritual of the sort, but mainly the Buddha was there, and people who had heard about him in time and managed to make the journey could simply hear from him, put a question to him, or just hear him speak. And usually that would have enough of an effect that in many of these Buddhist texts, they are overcome with emotion, want to become his follower, or sometimes even gain enlightenment on the spot, just on hearing the paragraph or two that our records say he spoke out. Anyway, after that, by which I mean after his life, so once the Buddha had died, you had a bit of a problem on your hands, you had a different situation, you couldn't do that anymore. And well, it was a great mystery for the what became the Buddhist tradition, what started just as a band of followers, of what to do now that he wasn't there anymore. And so lots of customs and practices and even a sort of culture evolved of how to keep the spirit of the Buddha present and how to conjure it among people practicing his teaching. So a lot of effort went into remembering exactly what he said, and that was recited in these what are called councils, and people chanted the sutras and chanted them to their students, who chanted them to their students so that it could be remembered. About 5 centuries later, it started to be written down for the doctrine side of things, if you like. For the evoking of the qualities, which is really what we're going for on these Friday evenings. For the evoking of the qualities, we really need to just bring the Buddha to mind. But the traditional Buddhist word, as Maitreya hinted in his meditation, for mind also means heart. So sort of bringing the Buddha into your heart mind by doing a ritual to sense, however dimly, a direction you want to move in. So if we're moved by the Buddha's story, or even touched by meditation, the way to really convert that into a sort of light our little balloon of inspiration and send it up into the sky, we do a ritual. So we'll just say some words in praise of an enlightened one, chant his name, make offerings to the shrine, perhaps even just look at the shrine. The Buddhist shrines are often well set up, particularly to evoke the Buddha's qualities already. The candles are to stand for the light of the truth of his teaching. The flowers are beauty and impermanence. The candles are the light of his own enlightenment. The flowers are the beauty and impermanence embodied in his teaching. And the incense, which we'll be lighting in a mo, would be the perfuming effect of people taking up that teaching and practicing it together. So even in a simple Buddhist shrine, you've got qualities evoked, not just written down or spoken or remembered or thought about, but evoked, hinted at, touched on. So we'll speak some words in praise of those qualities, hear a bit from the Buddha's own words, chant his name, and just open ourselves up to that highest value. And we don't need to have connected with the Buddha for very long or thought about him very much to want to do this, because you could just say that what you're making an offering to, if you do that, or what you are praising, is your own highest potential. So the unbounded wisdom and love that it's possible for a human being to break through into quite irreversibly, that possibility underlying all of our Buddhist practice, all of our attempts, smaller or bigger, to move towards that, are underlain by the possibility that any human being can achieve full and perfect enlightenment, where it's not possible to have an angry thought anymore. It's not possible not to respond with love and deep awareness. We're just going to be praising that possibility in the world, and that includes in ourselves. So If you make an offering to your shrine, which could just be bowing to the shrine you see on the screen here, or to your own one if you've got one at home, it's saying, it's a bit challenging, that you do want to move towards that potential. Okay, I'd best not say more so that we can fit all that in by 8:30. But when I recite these words, Polly, Mantra and Shantikara will repeat them after me. So most of this is in what we call call and response. So I'll just read a line, they'll repeat it, and you can say it out too. Probably lots of you have done this before, but in case you're new to puja, which is what we call ritual, just repeat the line, see what it's like. Probably no one will even hear you, so just give it a go, see how you find it. And like when I pack a suitcase, I always forget one thing, but it changes what it is. And this evening it was a mantra. So is one of you confident leading the Shakyamuni mantra in the New Vidrasana style? If not, I can do it. No, right, I'm doing it. We'll read some verses. I will introduce a mantra, and these three will chant it with me. And again, just join in. We'll make offerings to the shrine. You can do whatever feels right for you at home, and just see what it's like. We're going to dive in, and actually, sorry, Mantra, I think for the sake of time, I'm going to slightly change the plan and just have the second reading after the second section. Thanks. So after the second section of this puja, you'll hear Mantra in nice, strong voice speak out some words that are from the enlightened mind itself, so from one of the very earliest Buddhist texts. And I'll read these words from a ritual written by our own founder and teacher, actually, to make it simple to connect with the enlightened mind. Have we done the lights? Or no, it needs doing that. So Polly will do the lights, and you can settle into your meditation posture. And we'll practice the threefold puja. I may have just changed colour. And again there. You could be closing your eyes and just getting ready to envelop the mind in something beautiful and rather unknown. You could take your mind back through anything that Kshatikara told of the Buddha's story and just see if there was something that particularly affected you there. If you felt any lift in your mind. And we're just praising or even revering that possibility in the world of lifting ourselves up as the Buddha did. So the threefold puja. Opening reverence. We reverence the Buddha.
We reverence the Buddha,
The perfectly enlightened one.
the perfectly enlightened one,
The shower of the way.
the shower of the way.
We reverence the Dharma.
We reverence the Dharma,
The teaching of the Buddha.
the teaching of the Buddha,
Which leads from darkness to light.
which leads from darkness to light.
We reverence the Sangha.
We reverence the Sangha,
The fellowship of the Buddha's disciples.
the fellowship of the Buddha's disciples,
That inspires and guides.
that inspires and guides.
Reverence to the three jewels. We reverence the Buddha
We reverence the Buddha
and aspire to follow him.
and aspire to follow him.
The Buddha was born as we are born.
The Buddha was born as we are born.
What the Buddha overcame,
What the Buddha overcame,
we too can overcome.
we too can overcome.
What the Buddha attained,
What the Buddha attained,
we too can attain.
we too can attain.
We reverence the Dharma
We reverence the Dharma
and aspire to follow it.
and aspire to follow it
With body, speech and mind
with body, speech and mind
until the end.
until the end.
The truth in all its aspects,
The truth in all its aspects,
the path in all its stages.
the path in all its stages.
We aspire to study,
We aspire to study,
practice,
practice,
realize.
realize.
We reverence the Sangha
We reverence the Sangha
and aspire to follow it.
and aspire to follow it.
The fellowship of those who tread the way.
The fellowship of those who tread the way.
As one by one,
As one by one,
we make our own commitment.
we make our own commitment.
An ever-widening circle.
An ever-widening circle.
The Sangha grows.
The Sangha grows. That enlightened one, whose sphere is endless, whose victory is irreversible, and after whose victory no defilements remain to be conquered. By what track will you lead him astray? The trackless one. That enlightened one, in whom there is not that ensnaring, entangling craving to lead anywhere in conditioned existence, and whose sphere is endless. By what track will you lead him astray? The trackless one. Those wise ones who are intent in absorption, in higher meditative states, and who delight in the calm of renunciation, even the gods love them, those thoroughly enlightened and mindful ones. Difficult is the attainment of the human state. Difficult is the life of mortals. Difficult is the hearing of the real truth. Difficult is the appearance of the enlightened ones.
Offerings to the Buddha. Reverencing the Buddha,
Reverencing the Buddha,
we offer flowers.
we offer flowers.
Flowers that today
Flowers that today
are fresh and sweetly blooming.
are fresh and sweetly blooming.
Flowers that tomorrow
Flowers that tomorrow
are faded and fallen.
are faded and fallen.
Our bodies too,
Our bodies too,
like flowers,
like flowers,
will pass away.
will pass away.
Reverencing the Buddha,
Reverencing the Buddha,
we offer candles.
we offer candles.
To him who is the light,
To him who is the light,
we offer light.
we offer light.
From his greater lamp,
From his greater lamp,
a lesser lamp we light within us.
a lesser lamp we light within us.
The lamp of Bodhi,
The lamp of Bodhi,
shining within our hearts.
shining within our hearts.
Reverencing the Buddha,
Reverencing the Buddha,
we offer incense.
we offer incense.
Incense whose fragrance
Incense whose fragrance
pervades the air.
pervades the air.
The fragrance of the perfect life,
The fragrance of the perfect life,
sweeter than incense,
sweeter than incense,
spreads in all directions,
spreads in all directions
throughout the world.
throughout the world.
Swaha. Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni 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 Swaha.
Okay, so that's very nearly all there's time for. But we really hope we'll see you or sense you for the next 3 Fridays as well. So do join us for more stories from the Buddha's life and ritual. We'll be building on what we do each week, so we may do slightly different rituals. We'll certainly be doing different bits of the story, perhaps build the meditations a bit too. So stick with it for the series if you can. The only other thing to say, except for thanks very much to Polly for being our tech person this evening, a seasoned tech crew member, is that we'd really welcome any donation you feel you can make to help us keep doing this work. We've been really, really pleased by people's generosity so far in supporting us to turn all our activities online and really give you as much as we can of the inspiration we've received here at the LBC out into the ether for you to connect with from wherever you are. But we do need donations to keep it going. So all these classes are free, as I hope you already know. So there's no obligation to give anything. But I think Polly will be posting or has posted a link into the chat for you to give. If you feel able, we will really appreciate any gift, but particularly a monthly one if you feel able. Helps us very much. So thank you for thinking about that. And thanks to my friends here, and much look forward to seeing you next week. So tune in 7 o'clock next Friday. In fact, 7 o'clock any weeknight. We're always here. Someone is always in this room. 7 o'clock. Keep tuning in. Okay. See you soon. Good night.